Here's the agenda for today. We did send this out, but if you weren't able to see it, I do have a recorded message from District Governor Cindy. She was not able to join us today. She, like Jerry, or double booked an event called Blue Denim, which is part of District Governor Line training is taking place today. So it's a great event. So I know they're going to have a special morning as well. And then we have two speakers, Elizabeth Cruft Anderson and Reem Gunam, who will be joining us. And then we'll go over some announcements, then our typical district grant, global grant, and then an open Q&A at the end. I'm going to go ahead as we introduce Elizabeth and put today's global grant that's being reviewed, the full grant, into the chat box. So if you didn't have a chance to look at that, that will be available to you as well.
You're going to have Cindy's presentation
Yeah.
first.
So yeah, Cindy, as I said, has recorded this for us.
Good morning, Rotarians. I'm sorry I can't be here with you in person today. I had a scheduling conflict. Nonetheless, I want to share a few thoughts with you. Today, I could not be more proud to be a Rotarian. Although we face the shameful fact that in the United States of America, citizens mobbed our country's Capitol building to disrupt our democracy, Rotary gives me hope and resolve. I am reminded of our core values: leadership, integrity, diversity, service, and friendship, and also of our four-way test. As I open the grants meeting with all of you, I am also reminded of our resolve to do good in the world. Your acts of service are significant harbingers of peace. When we help those less fortunate than the rest of us, we close the gap between the haves and the have-nots. Our district grant and global grant program is vitally important and has been historically very successful. Thank you for your service to bring these gifts of help locally and globally. You are peacemakers. To quote Dr. Bernice King, peace is not the absence of violence. It is the presence of justice. Lastly, I want to share with you this photo. Taken sometime between 1909 and 1932, this is a photo of 23 Rotarians standing on the steps of our nation's Capitol, who were also 23 members of Congress. When I Googled the question, how many Rotary members are also members of Congress, just 2 days ago, this is the only information I could find. We have work to do. Please join me this year in wearing your Rotary pin every day and share our story. Rotary grows leaders dedicated to truth, fairness, beneficial acts of service, building goodwill for all. Have a wonderful meeting, and thank you once again for your service in Rotary.
Thank you, District Governor Cindy. She and I were talking yesterday, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I really miss wearing my Rotary pin. I mean, we're not going out anywhere now to have that on. So that's another reason where I'm really anxious we can be back together again as a group. Whoops. So Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you, please.
Yes, it's with great pleasure that I introduce one of my favorite people. Elizabeth Cruft Anderson is a senior major gifts officer with Rotary International. She lives in District 5100, just north of us near Portland. And Elizabeth has done some workshops in this district before. She is a fount of knowledge and a wonderful person to work with. She always has a ready smile. And it is my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth. We'll stop our share, Elizabeth, so that you can start yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Tim. What a nice introduction. And I love the old photos that come up. Okay, so I'm looking here. Gosh. I actually can't see that I can share my screen.
Okay, let us check the security. Nope, you should be able to, Elizabeth.
The green square at the bottom.
There we go. All right. Well, it's lovely to be here. And can you see this now? Can you see the screen up there?
Yes.
Good. Well, it's really nice particularly to be invited to this grants meeting. And, I have to say that, typically I'm a fundraiser for the Rotary Foundation. And so I'm, talking about fundraising and ways to support the Rotary Foundation. And it's just, it's really, the work that's really being done and those funds that are being used by the grants. So it's a real privilege actually to be here with your grants group in particular. So um, a little bit about myself. I do live up here in Portland, just at Lake Oswego, actually just outside Portland. And I've been with the Rotary Foundation for almost 11 years now as a gift officer. And my role is primarily to work one-on-one with Rotarians and non-Rotarians, but primarily Rotarians on supporting the programs and grants of the Rotary Foundation. So in that time that I've been with Rotary as a staff person and traveling up and down the West Coast, my territory is actually from San Francisco up to Alaska. So I do get to meet with a lot of really wonderful and very blessed to meet with a lot of really wonderful and interesting Rotarians who are doing incredible work just as you are in your district. But one of the things that I have learned over my time in Rotary is that people really give for two reasons. And one is because they're pulled to the cause, to give to support a reason or a feeling or a cause. And the other reason that people give is they give to people. They give to people they trust. They give to people who are part of an organization and committed to an organization. And so fundraising is really based on that peer-to-peer conversations and asking, making sure that you're asking in your clubs and your districts. People rarely give out of obligation or duty, and if they do, it really isn't sustainable. Really connecting to the why we're doing this work and why it's important to support this organization is much more important than the how. There's a few things that I've also learned, and when I speak to major donors and bequest society members, and sort of three things come out of these conversations. And the first is impact. People support the Rotary Foundation because of our impact. And there really isn't a greater example of this than our polio eradication efforts. And, we are truly a leader in the charity world, for this effort, among others, but this effort alone. And if you think, 3 billion children have received polio vaccine, that's 3 billion lives that have been changed. And secondly is trust. There is great trust in the Rotary Foundation. When you're looking to, part with your funds and invest in an organization, you want an organization that you can trust. And don't take my word for it. There is an outside Charity Navigator is an outside charity rating. It's the leading charity rating source. And they have consistently rated Rotary a 4-star charity. And there really are 1% of organizations are a 4-star charity, and particularly this consistently. And we are again this year rated a 4-star charity. And the third reason that people give to Rotary is choice. We offer a lot of options on ways that you can make your gift. And we also offer a lot of options on how you can direct that gift. So how you can choose to have those funds used. So as a member of Rotary, you have this incredible global charity just at your fingertips that you can choose to support if you wish in a way that means the most to you. So how are we, in fact, using these funds? And I just thought this was kind of an interesting graphic. This is sort of a pulling of all of the area of focus grants from 2014 to 2019. And you can see, you know, where the interest of Rotarians is really at in terms of the grants that are being used for different areas. Over the past few years, water and sanitation has been significantly growing. Rotary is increasingly investing in water projects. And whereas most organizations have a very, you know, top-down kind of, you know, top-down hierarchy to them, Rotary is really, I like to think of it as kind of the upside down triangle, where instead of having, you know, the trustees and the organization leadership tell the organization the grants and programs they want to do, Rotary is really following the lead of our members. So each time you do a grant, each time the organization, the membership is saying they want to do more water grants, it leads the organization in terms of our focus. So it really remains, even though it's a very, very large charity, it remains very, very grassroots. And I think part of that is really that at the heart of it, we are a granting organization. With the exception of polio and a few other things, we exist, we really exist to provide grants to our membership to do the work that they're looking to do. And I'm sure in this group, if you haven't heard, there is a newly approved area of focus that will launch in July 2021, and that will be environmental sustainability. So I think particularly here in the Northwest, I know talking to Rotarians in Seattle, there's already clubs that are environmental focused clubs. There may be, you know, I know there's one here in Portland. I think this might be an area of interest to quite a few Rotarians and has been already a part of many of the Rotary grants and projects have had an environmental piece to it, but it will be an official area of focus that, you know, grants can be pulled from and donors can choose to support. So I am a fundraiser, that is my role. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about two things. Tim and Leanne had asked me to talk a little bit about the endowment, and then just some ways to give that maybe you haven't heard of before. You know, for some, this might just be a refresher. We have a pretty savvy group here, but for some, this might be some new information. So there are really kind of two ways to make a gift to the Rotary Foundation. One is an outright gift. And that outright gift, you know, cash or stock or whatever it might be, and you're recognized as major donor, you know, Paul Harris Society, and gifts of $250,000, you're recognized as Arch Clump. And these are cumulative giving. So give gifts over time, that if you reach 10,000, you're a major donor. If you reach 250,000, you're Arch Clump Society. And then on the second, you know, side of this, we have commitments. These are future commitments that are recognized as Bequest Society. Some districts still recognize, and we do still have benefactors. And I'm just curious, by a raise of hand, I can kind of see a few of you, how many of you have heard of the Legacy Society? So we have a few hands in there. So the Legacy Society is a new recognition from Rotary. And what it is it's recognizing donors who have left the Rotary Foundation in their estate in some form of $1 million or more. And here on the West Coast, a will or bequest left in someone's estate of $1 million is not that rare. You know, you have a lot of high property values, you have donors who have acquired a number of assets. And so the idea was that it really aligned with recognizing our very important Bequest Society donors, really the same as we recognize our outright giving donors. So it's kind of a balance of the Arch Clump Society. So just some ways really quickly on ways that you can give, and I'll go over some of these a little bit more. Cash, of course, is always a way to give. However, you know, I have yet to have, I think, an Arch Clump Society done straight, you know, with cash. but there are gifts, cash, appreciated securities. This year, I was just talking to someone right here at the end of the year. The markets have been doing very well. And all of a sudden here in November and December, we had a really large influx of appreciated securities here at the end of the year. So folks are feeling fairly comfortable in their accounts. Life insurance, property, real estate, and some of these other options are ways that you can also give. So where do you direct the gifts to? I'm not going to go into too much detail. Polio and annual fund, of course, remain the lifeblood and the important focus of the Rotary Foundation. We continue to do need and utilize those polio funds, very, very efficiently. All gifts to polio are matched 2-to-1 by the Gates Foundation, and they still are. So that's a gift of $1 or a gift of $10,000. Those gifts are still being matched 2-to-1. And the annual fund, I think probably most folks are familiar with, but there are ways that you can designate within the annual fund. Share, of course, is the most common, and that's gifts that come back to fund that valuable DDF that you have, as well as other ways to allocate it would be the World Fund or an area of focus. And I put directed gifts up here. This is a way to give to the foundation that may not be as familiar to folks. And directed gifts have become increasingly popular over the last year and a half. And they are gifts of at least $30,000 that provide a district a grant. So in essence, they're replacing the need for World Fund. The donor can specify an area of focus, a geographic region, or a district to receive this grant. And what it does is it provides the funds for a global grant. So, folks that have a particular area of the world or a particular cause that they're looking, they want to support water or children or whatever it might be, and they can make a contribution of 30,000 or more, and basically it just provides that district with kind of a free grant. It doesn't require you to have that. It replaces that World Fund piece of it. So it doesn't kind of can move grants along a little bit quicker in that sense. So it's becoming a little bit more of interest of late. And then finally, the endowment fund. And I'll spend a little bit of time here, but the endowment fund is, of course, the permanent ongoing funds that provide sort of the stability for the Rotary Foundation into perpetuity. Last published report, so that was 1920, there were 17.6 million in spendable earnings that came off of the endowment fund. So when gifts come into the endowment fund, that corpus is never spent, but the spendable earnings are calculated off that. So it provides into perpetuity an ongoing flow of funds to share, which provides your DDF, to refund to the World Fund, or to a particular area of focus. So it's an incredibly powerful tool. Rotary was kind of late to the endowment game. We really didn't start fundraising for the endowment until the late 80s. And so given, the demographics of our Rotary membership, it's been growing over a number of years. But for the size of the organization, we're finally now catching up to having an endowment that is of a size that can continue to support the work of Rotary into the future. Rotary has a goal. The trustees have set out a goal to raise $2.25 billion by 2025. And that is really primarily an effort to capture all of the bequests that we know that are out there that folks just don't tell the foundation about. So many Rotarians will include the Rotary Foundation in their estate plan or in their will, but they don't always, take that next step of informing us that that will is coming. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's important in just a minute. When we talk about bequests or outright gifts to the endowment, that's when we start using the word legacy. So a legacy gift is any gift to the endowment either outright or through a bequest. So ways that you can direct your gift within the endowment: the World Fund is, of course, the most popular. It's where any gift that comes to the foundation that doesn't have a designation goes to. So if we receive a bequest, it goes into the endowment and the World Fund. Something that you should be aware of is that the World Fund this past year, the trustees took a few $1,000,000 out of the World Fund to be more responsive to COVID-19 grants and local projects around the world. There's also been a significant increase in grants over the past. Rotary has seen this sort of curve of the World Fund growing like this and grant requests growing like this. And so there's been just a lot of increased pressure on the World Fund, and which is great. It means that the World Fund and grants are being utilized. It does mean that we need to kind of refill that pool a little bit. So there are donors that are making significant gifts to the World Fund. And share, I think somebody has their, if I could just remind folks to hit mute again, that would be wonderful. Share, of course, is where your valuable DDF comes from. These are gifts that provide 50% to the World Fund and 50% that come back to your district. Oh, good. And this is a snapshot of when you give to the endowment, you have the option of creating a named fund. And these are individually managed funds within the endowment. And many of you may see this on your grant reports or on your district reports. This grant is funded by the Jane Smith Fund at Rotary, or you'll see it come back on your district, district fundraising reports and things like that say, this is from this named endowed gift. But you have the option to create a named fund. And I just like this graphic. I think it's kind of cool. It shows a gift that was made of $25,000 and created a named fund in 1995. And you can see that gift has grown. The light blue area is sort of that up and down, growing and of the investment of the gift in the endowment. And that blue line is sort of the growth. So the cool thing about this is it really shows the power of providing gifts to the endowment. And you can see that this initial gift of $25,000 now has a current market value in 2019 of almost $37,000, and most importantly, the spending on it is $38,000. So this gift has grown, and it has also provided more grants and spendable earnings off of it than the initial. So when folks ask me, why should I give to the endowment? Really, it's for this exact reason, this long-term growth and ultimate, opportunity to provide more funds than were initially invested. So that's I like this graphic, and this is a real world. This is actually a real named fund. This isn't hypothetical. This is actually a gift. So where are we on this target of 2025, of 1,000,000,025 by 2025 by 2025? This just shows the commitments and the net assets. So we're on our way. We're doing well. We're on our way. We are increasing our giving, and more importantly, we're capturing those folks who have left the foundation in their estate plan. I do frequently get asked, how is the endowment invested? This is from 2019-20, and this is sort of the broad investment strategy of the Rotary endowment. So there is, the trustees have the ultimate say on how the foundation is invested. However, there is an investment committee as well, made up of professional advisors and Rotarians. And in fact, actually, if any of you ever have interest, it's an interesting committee. There was a fellow in Oregon here in West Lynn that actually served on the investment committee for a number of years as well. So there are opportunities for Rotarians to be a part of this process. This is, I'm sorry for throwing a bunch of grants at you at 9 o'clock or a bunch of graphs at you at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning, but this one's kind of interesting as well. So this is also from 1920, and this shows the rate of return on the endowment. So this 3.7 is the spendable earnings basically coming off of the endowment. You can see it's gone up and down. You can see 2009 was a terrible year. That was that 2008, 2009. And interestingly, this stops at 2019. And this past year was sort of this wild ride. I think it was for everybody, but where we ended up in December, which is halfway through the Rotary year, is we had actually seen all of the return, all of our losses. We'd regained all of our losses, and in fact are above where we typically are. And so each year this is calculated when the funds come off of the individual named funds within the endowment, and the endowment, it typically falls between 3 and 5%. So switching gears, just really to lastly, I was going to talk a little bit about the legacy, and these are some unique ways. I won't go into a huge amount of detail because it's a lot of information, but please know that you can reach out to me. I'm happy to go into these in more detail to see what it looks like for you individually, or to see how you might want to share these with others. But these are some more kind of unique ways to make a gift to the foundation that maybe or maybe not you've heard of. Hopefully most folks have heard of the Bequest Society. And this is gifts of $10,000 or more in your will or estate plans. We do have some sample language we can share with you that can make it much easier for you to include it in your will. And we have, this is really kind of the most common. I would encourage you in your Rotary life, when you speak about your involvement in grants and your involvement in Rotary, mention the Bequest Society when you can in your clubs and to your club foundations, because there are a number, we get a lot of bequests that show up at the foundation that we didn't know about each year. And it'd be nice to have captured those early on, because maybe we could help those Rotarians direct their gifts rather than it kind of going into the World Fund. Maybe they would have a passion they would like to do. So just collecting those bequests is very important. You can make Rotary a beneficiary of your life insurance policy or your retirement, your IRA. This also qualifies you for Bequest Society recognition. And then charitable gift annuities. A lot of folks are familiar with commercial annuities, and this is basically kind of the same idea, but it has an irrevocable charitable purpose. So you can make a gift of $10,000. Cash or appreciated securities are a great way to do this. In fact, some folks will cash out high yielding securities and put them into an annuity and then repurchase those securities again. It's a really interesting strategy for balancing your portfolio. And the annuity is going to pay you a fixed rate for the rest of yours or your spouse's lifetime. So it provides you a tax deduction. So we saw a lot of this right at the end of last year, that folks had really high yielding securities. They withdrawed them, put them into a charitable annuity or charitable trust. They received the tax deduction from it. And then they rebought that Apple stock or Tesla stock or whatever it might be kind of at the current level. So you kind of can take advantage of utilizing some of these tools. We do have non-Rotarians actually take advantage of some of these tools just because of the fact that we're able to offer them. It's, Rotary, there's not many humanitarian charities that offer these quite as much as Rotary does. You'll see them with your universities and colleges and things, and hospitals often do, but you have the opportunity right here at your fingertips to take advantage of some of these. And a charitable remainder trust, Rotary will, if we are the sole beneficiary, Rotary will write that trust with you and work with you and help you identify a trustee. It is a gift of $100,000, And again, these are gifts that pay you income back. So you can make a contribution and then you're receiving the income back from this gift. You or your spouse are receiving income back from this gift for the remainder of your lives. At the end of the donor's life and the spouse's life, then that gift comes to Rotary. So it's, again, I'd be happy to, talk with anyone a little bit more detail about these. These are a little bit more complicated ways of giving, but they are opportunities. And then the donor advised fund, this is sort of the last thing I have up my sleeve. The donor advised fund is like creating your own personal charity, your own personal foundation within the Rotary Foundation. And you provide an initial gift of $10,000 to the Rotary Foundation. We help you, we do the IRS filing for that. We help you manage those funds. And then you can make a gift to any 501c3 US charity from that. So if you, at the end of the year, a good example of this, I actually just did this for someone in my club recently, and they're very charitable. And they, at the end of the year in December, they're writing checks to the Boys and Girls Club and the Animal Welfare Organization and to Rotary and to a number of different charities, their church and their, whatever university. And so they had this sort of long list of nonprofits that they're giving to. And what they decided to do was they said, okay, we typically give away 25,000 or 20,000 a year or 10,000 or whatever it might be. So we put it all into a donor advised fund. And then from there, they can choose where they want it to go. For your group in particular, your grants group here, what some folks are using it for, you can also pull from that donor advised fund directly into an approved global grant. So you can, if you know that you want to give to water projects or grants that are coming up, you can have a donor advised fund. And then when that grant is approved, you can just pull it straight over. Oh, I did have one more, and that's the IRA rollover. I am not an accountant. I just play one on TV. And something that you should, if you have a lot of funds in your IRA, something that is a good thing to do would be to have a conversation with your tax accountant. There were some important changes made with the CARES Act, allowing for charity and particularly for retirement fund contributions to charities that have been extended into 2021. So there are a lot of ways to utilize your IRA funds to make charitable gifts. And when you hit 72, you're going to have to pull from it anyway. And so there might be some opportunities depending on your individual tax situation to kind of balance out some of your taxation based on these new CARES Act laws. Lastly, I keep saying lastly, but really this is lastly. There are some things that, since we're all sitting around nowadays in our homes in front of our computers, take the time and write down these two links here. One of it is rotary.planmygift.org, and it has a gift illustrator. And if annuities or gifts that pay you income back are of interest, or you're just looking for something to click around on, you can actually do a little calculator that says, okay, if I donate this amount, this is how much I can see come back. And it's a way to kind of see in action some of those gifts. And the other thing too that Rotary has done is we've created a relationship with freewill.com. And it is always surprising how many folks do not have a will or any sort of estate documents. And what this is it's an opportunity. If you include the Rotary Foundation, you can have a basic will prepared for free. Okay, last one, I promise, I really do. I see Leanne's gonna give me the hook in a minute. But I just thought this was cool. I don't know if you can see it very well on your end, but somebody on staff, this was presented at the staff meeting, actually to all of the Rotary. Oh, somebody actually looked at the annual fund, which is the yellow line there, and looked at all, the amazing thing about being part of a 100-year organization is that we have 100 years of data. So they looked at all of the major world events and and its effect on membership and annual fund. And it's just sort of interesting to see that line. And I just threw it in here because I think it's cool. Anyway, and hope for the future. And so please let me know. I'm available. I serve your district. That is my role, is to serve Rotarians and to serve you in making gift conversations or helping to make gifts or provide information to anybody who's interested. So I am here in Oregon, so I'm in your time zone. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to be here. And I don't know if we have questions, Leanne or Tim or.
Right, right, Elizabeth. I would invite everyone who does have questions to put it into the chat, and then we'll have Elizabeth address those. While you're doing that, Elizabeth, thank you. You have always been a great friend of 5110, and I really appreciate you taking the time this morning. And I'm telling you, I'm a morning girl, plus I love numbers and charts, so you had me at pie chart girl. It was great. Thank you.
I did see that there were some questions in here, and one of them was about the environment area of focus, and that will be the 7th area of focus. That one's easy to answer. So there will be an additional area of focus starting in July. So we'll have to all remember that list again. And I can actually answer these other questions that were sent in. I can answer them individually if that's easier.
Well, some of them, others may be interested in it as well. So
yeah, someone had asked what the percentage of contributions are major gifts, and I actually don't have that information. I don't have that information at the tip of my fingers, but I can find that out. But there are, it's one of those things where major gifts make a major impact when they happen. Annual fund is the primary driver, but there's a significant number of major gifts. And another question about QCDs, about qualified charitable distributions. And yes, there are opportunities to make gifts that are more beneficial. If you're making qualified charitable distributions, there is a opportunity to take advantage of some of the taxation. I'm not describing this very well, but if you're making a qualified distribution anyway, you can deduct a higher amount from that based on some of the CARES Act laws that happened. So I'm probably not answering that terribly well.
See if anybody wants to go deeper.
And I had a question, and I can reach out to that person as well and provide a little bit more detail on the QCDs. And I had a question about what does private investment mean? And is that related to the investment of the endowment?
Susan, if you can unmute yourself and maybe add clarity to the question for Elizabeth.
Yeah, you showed a chart, and it was a really interesting chart about how much was in, income funds and how much was in equities and how much was in real estate. And I understand all that because we're doing all that too. But then there was a section for like private investments, and it's like, what does that mean? You're giving some of the directors money to go off and fund their businesses? Or, are we becoming an organization that goes and vets businesses and decides which ones we're going to invest in? Because that seems like a lot of other people are already doing that full time. So I was just curious as to what it meant. You put it up there. It's a substantial percentage. I was interested.
And I think those are just individual stocks, but I can find out as well. Again, I'm not as fluent on the investment of the endowment in terms of that, but I can certainly find out. There are individual stocks that we're not investing in individual businesses. There is a conflict of interest there, but there has been interest in some sustainability issue, people who want to make sure that the investments are you know, diversely in stock and other things like that. So I'm probably not answering this well. Again, it's not really my
You
area
don't
of
know.
expertise. I
Yeah.
don't really know, but
I think
I
you
will.
answered it. You
I'll
don't
find
know.
out. I can
Yeah.
find these are always great questions for me as well. So
I was just
yeah,
curious.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's Rotary doing there?
Yeah. But
Great,
well, thank you.
Elizabeth. Thank you. And I said one of the important things for Tim and I in inviting Elizabeth to join us this morning is we're the heavy user side with our active global grant program here in our district grants. And I think sometimes we forget to consider, in my words, behind the curtain of where that funding comes from. So I think it's important. I'm also a believer in what we give our attention to grows is to bring it to the forefront, particularly because the World Fund is running out of money, that we do need to continue to focus on the investment and the support, the funding side of it as well. So I think that was important. Tim, this other piece for me is Tim does a great presentation on, you know, Rotary, what's in it for me, because so much of what we do as Rotarians is focused outward, but there's a whole lot of benefits as a Rotarian and a member of this organization. And I think taking advantage of the estate planning products and programs that are available and to help us, you know, meet our philanthropic needs as well as our financial needs is also important. And as I've learned more about the foundation's programs, I wanted to have all of you have the opportunity to hear that as well. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. You know, this district has benefited from 3 disaster grants, 1 for COVID and 2 for the fires that happened in the fall. And that's, you know, as a result of all of the giving from our benevolent Rotarians. And then certainly in our district, I think we have tens of thousands of interest earned money that comes in and supports our grant program. So it is significant, absolutely, that we focus on this. So again, thank you. I have actually 2 poll questions for the group. There, obviously, this is a lot of information and details. So Tim and I would like to know if you would be interested in having more information available, and we would plan something for you there. So I'm going to launch the poll, and if you would answer these questions for us, we would appreciate it.
So while we're finishing the poll, Elizabeth, thank you so much. It's always good to see your smiling face, and I love your presentations. It really helps to explain what the foundation is, why it's there, how it's funded, and how we can make a contribution, but it ties in so much with what's going on in the grant world. And as the fund development chair, you make such a nice presentation that I'd love to just wrap you up and take you to every one of these clubs and give them the same message. So thank you.
So everyone can see the results of the poll here. So Dave, I think you, Tim, and I can work on, you know, putting together a program with Elizabeth that we can make available to our clubs, our TRF chairs, and addressing all that. So Elizabeth, you'll be hearing from us there for sure.
Yeah, and you know, certainly, thank you, Dave. It's very sweet of you. You know, in this virtual world, we do have a lot of opportunities to come together. So maybe, yeah, I'd be happy to talk about how we bring this information out a little bit further into the clubs.
Exactly. All right, Elizabeth. And honestly, we're going to get into the business now, the meeting. So go have a good Saturday with your family. Thank you.
Check to see if Reem's on.
So I have, my understanding is Reem is not able to join us this morning. So Tim and I will reschedule her for a future date. So the next part of the program we'd like to get into is kind of open it up to you with some announcements and an opportunity to talk about some of the things that have happened over the last couple of months. So I will begin with, in December, Tim and I hosted a Zoom meeting, and along with the rest of the foundation team, to go over some of the changes that were made for district grants. And several of you attended that. Tim and Kathy are going to talk about that video being available for reference, but we wanted to give you an opportunity, if you were there, or if you had an opportunity to see the video, to get any clarification for questions. So go ahead and unmute yourself if you have something that comes to mind there, please. You guys are being too easy on us this morning.
Move on, move on.
Okay, great. So Tim, do you want to talk about registration
Right,
in the next
so
meeting?
we have for the last 2 or 3 Zoom meetings done a Zoom registration. And what we've learned is a couple things. One is that I cannot send out files to all the registrants using the Zoom registration without going through one at a time and copying your emails over to my own email to send it. So, and the other thing we learned is that a lot of people register as tester, and that's something new to us too. So for the next quarterly grant meeting, which will be in April, on April 3rd, we will be using the DACDB registration. You'll get the link that way, but also we'll be able to send any grant requests and any other information using the Pmail function. It'll make it a lot more user friendly on our part. So you want to?
Yeah, usually during these meetings, we do a little bit of an educational piece as well. So I did want to bring it to your attention for those of you that will be submitting global grants in the future. There is a new requirement that at the point you submit the application, in order for it to be complete, you need to include your global grant bank account information. If it's not included in the application will not be considered complete and will not be reviewed. So please make a note of that, share it with your grant writers and your teams that would be working on global grants, because that's going to slow down the grant process if that information is missing.
Also, we want to let you know that because of, as Elizabeth mentioned, the enthusiasm for writing global grants and the moving of World Fund dollars to the Disaster Relief Fund to cover COVID and the many fires and so forth, disasters that were happening in this country, the World Fund is expected to be depleted by February. So if you're planning to do a global grant, our recommendation is you have it ready to go in April to present to this group so that July 1st, your grant is ready to apply to the Rotary Foundation so that you'll get a World Fund match in July, because that's filled every year starting July 1st. So tell the people in your clubs, if they're planning to do a global grant, our recommendation is not to, put it in until put it in April, having it ready to go for July 1st. Eric, you have a question?
Yes, Tim, I just wanted to go back to, you were talking about sending information out about the next meeting and that kind of stuff. When you send stuff out, is it just to the list of former and current participants in these meetings, or do you send something out to all members of the district? I just want to know, so whether I need to be distributing that within my club, or if everyone's already getting it, then I don't need to do that.
I don't send it out to everyone, Eric. I send out the invitation to this meeting to everyone in the district, but beyond that, I just send it out to the grant meeting attendees list.
So the invitation to the meeting does go to all district members?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I will make a call out now to any other district grant, or excuse me, district foundation members. I know Dave is on here, not sure about Steve Mathis, and Tommy's on here. More than welcome to make any committee reports from your role on the committee at this point.
This is Steve Mathis. I am here.
Hi, Steve. Good morning.
Good morning. So yeah, I have a very brief report for the endowment. So for the current Rotary year, we have 8 new major donors, level 1, 1 new major donor, level 2, and 1 new major donor, level 3. We have 1 new bequest society, level 1, and 1 new bequest society, level 2, from July 1st until today.
Awesome.
So the additional report is that we now have in excess of $33,000 coming from the endowment to DDF each year.
Great, thank you, Steve, and thank everyone. That's wonderful. So Steve, would you take a moment and go through what a major donor is, what bequest level 1 is, level 2 for the group? We may have some new Rotarians, or it never helps for me to be refreshed on what those are.
Sure. So we'll start with major donor. A major donor who is someone who has donated directly in cash, not a promise, but has directly donated funds to the Rotary Foundation in excess of $10,000. The level 2 goes up to $25,000 and so forth and so on, depending on the level, is a larger commitment of funds, obviously. The Bequest Society is a promise of future funds. You don't have to give the money now, but it's a promise of future funds. Level 1 is $10,000. And again, it kind of follows the major donor, $25,000 for level 2 and so forth and so on. So the Bequest Society is to the endowment. The major donor status is not to the endowment, but to the Rotary Foundation directly.
Great.
Thank you. One of the two things I would add to that for Rotarian couples like Tim and myself, we each have our own separate gifting account. However, because it's a single household, those are combined and towards that major donor level and bequest. So just be aware of that. So you can link your accounts. They stay uniquely yours, but you can link them for the total giving purposes there. So that might be something you would want to talk to Steve about and consider. And Steve, it's my understanding, for example, major donor, that has to be cash. It wouldn't be points that anyone has gifted.
That's correct. Points are a whole nother category.
Right. All right. So any questions for Steve? Oh, nope. Somebody's just scratching an eye. I thought maybe a hand was raised. All right, thank you, Steve, and thanks for all your hard work. Appreciate it. Tommy, your report? Tommy, we'll have you unmute and go ahead.
Sorry about that.
Nope,
I did. We have 2 grant scholars right now, and am I on there?
Yeah.
So the 2 global. Okay, one is from Afghanistan. He is concluding his studies. He's not going to be able to come to the United States, of course. So he's stayed in Amsterdam or maybe Paris, where he goes back and forth a little bit. He's in Afghanistan. He's very bright. I hope he will be able to come visit us at some point. And so Luden is his name. He'll be concluding his studies through OSU online and apply extra monies because of the expense of Europe and everything. But that's come to us. And then we have a second global grant scholar who will be starting, we hope, in Costa Rica pretty soon, but we're not sure yet how that's going. So I don't know if Tim and Carol Brewerly are on this, but just so you know, it's coming, but it's because of COVID that it's slowed down. So these are still in place, and those 2 are approved, and that's my report. Thank you.
Great, Tommy. Thank you. That's exciting. We also have Nelson Mailer, who's our Polio Plus chair. Nelson, would you like to share your report with the group?
Absolutely. Good morning and Happy New Year, everybody. I am very, very happy to report that Rotarians throughout our district have been exceedingly generous yet again. From a Polio Plus standpoint, we have raised nearly $71,000, which represents about 49% of our district's Polio Plus goal. And then just to follow up on that, something that I am exceedingly proud of is that we've had nearly 800 of our district's Rotarians stand up and say, count on me to be a Polio Plus Society member. And really what that means is that every year you commit to contributing $100 towards the Polio Plus campaign. But that number, that 784 members, represents nearly 25% of our district's Rotarians. So that's 1 in 4. And I think that is something to be very, very proud of. And I am so happy to be able to report that. So thank you.
Thanks, Nelson.
And we're happy to hear that. That's great. So Nelson, if I was a Polio Plus chair in my club, or if I was a foundation chair in my club, and I wanted to promote the Polio Plus Society to my members, should they contact you? Do they go to the district website? How would you recommend that happen?
Sure. Either way works. Basically a lot of things funnel through me, and we will make sure that that club has the resources to be able to, give the information to their club members. Oftentimes, of course, given COVID, a lot of this is done via Zoom, but we can certainly make sure that the club has all the resources they need in order to adequately help educate and their club members with respect to where we are in the campaign, why it's important, and how to be able to participate.
Thank you. So if I make the decision to join the society, is there some sort of recognition that I can expect back?
Sure, absolutely. There is a very nice certificate and a Polio Plus pin that comes your way via snail mail, unfortunately, but it gets there sooner or later. But also what it is that those that are within the society get preemptive emails from me to help keep them abreast as to what's going on, where we are at with respect to this campaign. There's been a lot of challenges this year, of course, or this 2020 by virtue of the COVID. At one point we had to stop, but that gave us the opportunity to, reevaluate our situation, to replenish our supplies, our inventory, and now we're going back out there, not only with the polio vaccine, but also with the opportunity to help create inroads with respect to providing a distribution channel when the COVID vaccine becomes available. So we are definitely ambassadors of health, if not also peace.
Great, thank you.
Awesome.
Any other committee reports?
I'd just like to add that we also have a Triple Crown program in this district. It is not this is not a Rotary Foundation program. It is a district program. And the Triple Crown is our highest recognition of donors to the Rotary Foundation in District 5110. If you are a major donor, $10,000 or more to the foundation, if you are and a Bequest Society donor, $10,000 or more to the endowment, and a Paul Harris Society member, in which you pledge at least $1,000 per year to the Rotary Foundation or to the endowment. And along with that, you're also a Polio Plus Society member. So in those donations, you have given $100 per year to Polio Plus. You can be awarded the Triple Crown for District 5110. We've unfortunately lost a couple of members this year, but for a variety of reasons. But we have one new member this year, and I think we have a total of 24 members in the Triple Crown Society currently in the district.
Thanks.
Great, thank you, Steve. Hearing no other committee reports, we'll move on to Kathy Poole and district grants.
Okay, thank you, Leanne. And actually, before I talk about district grants briefly, I want to mention that there's actually one more global grants scholar in our district that her name is Sayaka Akayama. She's from Japan. She is a graduate student at the University of Oregon studying landscape architecture. And the reason she sometimes falls under the radar is because her funding comes from her home district in Japan. But Sayaka is here in Eugene. She's doing most of her coursework online, as are most university students these days. And she's very much interested and available in connecting with Rotary clubs, and it's a lot easier to do that via Zoom now than to travel around our district. So please feel free to reach out to me. I'm in regular contact with her. I'm her host Rotarian. My name is Kathy Poole and I'm in Eugene, and I can help you reach Sayaka if you're interested. Okay, on to district grants. I just wanted to mention a couple of updates. That we have had 64 grants funded in 2021, this current grant cycle. And I just want to say that As of the end of December, all of those district matching funds have been sent out to clubs, and some of the last checks were written right at the end of December. So I just want to make sure that those of you here, please check with your club treasurers. We want to be sure that you get those checks. Those checks actually come in the mail to the club address, and deposit those as soon as you can. Sometimes those sit for a while in post office boxes that don't get checked very often, but we want to be sure that you access or get those funds and deposit them as soon as you can. Just a reminder, well, we did a training session. Leanne mentioned that a little bit earlier on December 12th. Tim and Leanne, Hal Kibbe, and I participated, and we were able to video that, and we're going to be posting that online so that you can access it. And we also plan to do some future training in the spring for district grants, because there are lots of details, and we want to be sure folks have access to the information they need to apply for each successive round of district grants. Speaking of that, June 1 will be the deadline for district grants in 21-22. So kind of mark that on your calendar, and there will be, of course, more information coming about that. Let's see, one other thing I just want to encourage those of you who have 2021 grants in this current year. You do not need to wait until the end, until your grant is totally complete, to start compiling all of the information that you collected, including the receipts when you purchased grant related items. Let's say you have a food bank grant and you're out going to Costco or Safeway buying things. Please feel free. That grants module in DACDB is open. It remains open. You can start uploading your receipts. You can start uploading the checks that your club writes to pay for your grant expenses. I really encourage people to do that as you go along during the grant year, rather than waiting, because a year later or even 6 months later, it's sort of hard sometimes to track down those checks or to remember or figure out who has those receipts. So I encourage you to work on that as you go. And Hal Kibbe worked on designing a grant expense report that is accessible in the DACDB grants module on the left-hand menu bar. And that's a great way for you to keep track of your expenses and for us to be able to make sense of your expenditures related to your grants at the end of the grant year. So those are just a few little reminders, but yeah, I'm really pleased to say 64 grants were funded for 2021 projects. I know you're all out there hopefully figuring out how that money is going to be spent, and spending that money actually already. Some people are already talking about writing final reports. You can absolutely do that as soon as your project is done. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll help you out.
So we had a question about where do we find those videos? The videos are not yet up, and they will be up, and we'll let everyone know. Email will go out, so you'll be aware of it. Okay. What I'd like to add is the district grants committee, as I mentioned earlier, is Kathy as the chair. And she, prior to her, Julie DeCuro, and prior to that, Eric Hodnett, were responsible for reviewing all those grants, not only for whether or not they're appropriate for a district grant, but for reading all your final reports. And so if you can stay on top of that reporting, it makes life so much easier, because it takes hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours to go through all those grants to make sure they're complete, because the district is responsible to the Rotary Foundation for that. And it's no small task. And in fact, we're recruiting some people to work with Kathy. I know Tommy Drake has volunteered to work with Kathy. And so if you are interested in helping support the district grant process. We will provide all the training and so forth that you need. And just let Kathy or myself know if you have any interest, and that would be greatly appreciated. Any other questions? The one thing I do want to mention before we move on to global grants is that June 1st in the past, we've asked just for a cursory report of what money you're asking for. This year, we want your completed grant application June 1st. That doesn't mean you can't change it, but we're looking for a single complete grant application so that we can write the block grant to apply for all the funds right after July 1st. And then if you have a change of heart, that doesn't mean you can't change it. You can still make that change. That way we can get that block grant in and we can get the grant funding moving as quickly as possible so you can get your projects underway.
Great. Thank you, Tim. I'm going to ask, and thank you, Kathy. I'm going to ask Ralph Christensen up next, and I will share while we're making that transition. I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to move on to the global grant section. Ralph, good morning.
Good morning. So welcome all of you. Before we go, we only have one global grant issue to deal with this morning. And I'm going to turn that back over to Tim to deal with all of the details with that. But I did want to point out that the everybody's reporting appears to be up to date, which is fantastic. Thank you very much. And I would also just like to remind all of you that when your reporting is up to date, we're very happy about that. But don't forget that these global grants also have, even after your project has been completed on the ground, there is a module that you still need to deal with, and that is the report on the effectiveness, the way that you're going to determine whether your grant was successful and met all of its goals. And so don't forget to be thinking about that, how you do that, and how you're going to get that into place. With that said, Tim, would you like to go over
Yes.
the things that go with this grant? Thank you.
Thanks, Ralph. This grant is unique, and the situation is a lot more complex than it would appear for $2,500. So I need to back up a little bit, and if you'll bear with me on some history. Back last May or June, we learned that starting July 1st of 2020, we were going to lose the World Fund match for Club Cash. And so the Rotary Club of Medford, grant written by Chuck Root, came to me and said, if we get our grant submitted and approved prior to July 1st, we will get a World Fund match for Club Cash. And that was a significant amount of money. So what they agreed to do was if I would approve and the district governor would approve that, that was Rick Olson, that so that it could be completed by July 1st or prior to July 1st, they would get the match for the Club Cash. The agreement was if this committee did not approve the grant at that July meeting, then the grant would be withdrawn. So we went outside the parameters of our district policies to approve that grant prior to the grant meeting, with the caveat that it would be withdrawn if it wasn't approved. So because of the changing environment with the World Fund and the policies of the Rotary Foundation not always matching ours, we went outside of our policies to do that. With that caveat that Chuck had agreed to. So as we move forward, last grant meeting, we had a request from the Rotary Club of Bend, Mike Dillard, to approve the expenditure of our district DDF outside of our district when our district's not a primary grant writer. That's required by our policies, and that was approved. And that didn't seem to be a problem until we ran into another Rotary International issue. And that issue is that a grant has to be approved 90 days for a scholar prior to their entry into an academic program. And the rules are set up in North America for North American schools and universities. And so this grant is for a scholar to attend a university in South Africa. So the date has changed. And once again, our policies did not align with the Rotary International timeline for a university in South Africa. So the expenditure of our DDF outside of our district was approved at the last grant meeting. And so I went back to Mike saying, you know, this meeting is after the deadline for the grant to be approved for this student to attend the university in this academic year. So I talked to District Governor Cindy, and we both agreed to approve the expenditure of DDF outside of our district policy based on it being approved by this group at this meeting. I hope that makes sense. And the reason that we did that is because we want to support our Rotarians in the grants and use the money the way it was intended to be used since the expenditure was approved outside the district at the last meeting. So our policies state that this money can only be spent by our grants committee approval. And so I told Mike, if we don't approve it, then we have to withdraw the $2,500 DDF, as well as the World Fund match of $2,500. So this grant would be short $5,000 if we don't approve it.
So Tim, perhaps for the group, what's the remaining DDF balance for our global grants for this Rotary year?
We currently have over $200,000 available for global grants.
Thank you.
So Mike, would you like to say anything?
Yes, I would. I'd be happy to. And maybe I check with you and Leanne first. I think I'm relatively new to the world of global grants. I've been a Rotarian for a long time, but it's only in the last 12 months that I've gotten involved. And it's been a learning curve, but I'm striving to move up that hill. But I think if there's a little bit of time, Tim and Leanne, I might go into a little broader description of how these events unfolded. And since we didn't have our other speaker, I might take just a few more minutes, because I think I realize that probably the vast majority of people in our meeting here this morning have a lot more experience than I do. The experience that I've had, both with the initial global grant, which is not the one before you today that I got involved in, but particularly this scholarship global grant, has really been an eye-opener experience for me, particularly with regards to how Rotary responds and deals with situations like this. And as I'll explain, if it's okay to take the time, I'm tremendously impressed and pleased with how this all happened. So let me begin by going back and just explaining how the possibility of this global grant scholarship came about. The other grant that our club's involved in and that I've been kind of the lead person on is a literacy books for students in Botswana project. And that's been approved, and it's been, and we got in under the wire before July 1st, so we got the extra matching, and everything is going great on that project. We're dealing with some problems dealing with COVID and when the timing is going to occur for us to be able to go over Botswana on this project. But in that project, our partner is the Rotary Club of Gaborone, which is the capital of Botswana. And in the process of working on the books, a global grant, I've gotten to be good friends with one of the key members of that club. And he's the leader for the host club, the Gaborone Club. And then I'm the leader for the international club, which is the Ben Rotary Club. And he's a great guy. And we've become, via Zoom and WhatsApp and whatnot, we've become pretty good friends. Well, back in September of last year, in one of our calls, he, at the end of it, he says, Mike, I'd like to ask you a favor. And this kind of illustrates what other people had said earlier in our meeting today, how personal relationships come into play. But this guy's name is Bill McClellan. He grew up in New Zealand, but he's been in Botswana for many, many years. And what he proceeded to tell me was he's been trying to put together a scholarship grant, a Rotary scholarship grant, for about a year for a medical student who's Walunda Ngusanye. And hopefully a number of you, or at least a good many of you, have had a chance to read the application, and I won't go into that, but it explains a lot about Walundo, and just the basic facts are she's a native Botswanan. She's became a doctor in 2014, so she's been a doctor for almost 6 years now. And she was working in the public health medical program for poorer people or not wealthy people in Botswana. And there's this huge shortage of surgeons, and I won't go into the details of it, but in essence, they've got for a public mental health or medical health program in Botswana that serves 1.8 million people, there's only 4 surgeons. And so Walunda, she went and got accepted into a postgraduate surgery program in South Africa. She's now completed 3 of the 5 years with her own self-funding, but she's run out of money. So this is a grant to fund her last 2 years. Well, Bill told me that his club did not on its own have the ability to put together a grant. And he'd been looking for international clubs. He's been checking and contacting clubs in the UK and Germany and Holland and other places. But he asked if I would at all be able to help him put together a global scholarship grant, which I knew nothing about how that, how those differ from a regular global grant. In any event, I said, sure. When he told me about her, and I actually met her on a Zoom call. She's a very impressive young woman. And so what happened was he told me about a former member of their club who's an American who's down in Ojai, California. And he was a member of their club for several years while he was stationed through his work in Botswana. And so he said, you might contact this Mike Weaver down in Ojai and see if his club might be interested. So I called up Mike Weaver, and I have a good friend that lives in Ojai who he happened to know, and he and I hit it off. So he and I and Bill then together tried to put together this grant. And there was, and we were looking to get other clubs. I talked to a club up in Tacoma to see if they might get involved. But eventually it just developed where it was going to be the 3 of us, 3 clubs. And, we're all in different districts, but we all wanted to put this together if we could. So we started that in September. And that's when I had a call with Tim, because Mike Weaver explained to me how that generally speaking, clubs cannot contribute, or districts won't distribute or can't distribute DDF money to other district grants that are being applied for in a different district. And he wondered if our district had such a rule. So I talked to Tim and Leanne about it and learned that yes, we did have a rule. But after I explained to them the situation, very quickly, Tim said, and this is a week before our September meeting, he said, let me put you on the calendar for this meeting and you can give a pitch to waive the rule. So Tim's already explained that happened. Now it was after that happened that we started to figure out these timing problems. And also, well, and Tim's already sort of explained that, so I won't go through it again. but we had to get this application submitted, as it turned out, before December 9th in order to come within the time period that Rotary International requires. And actually, it was Mike Weaver down in Ojai that told me that in his district, if you run into a situation like this, the district governor has the authority to approve DDF between meetings. And he said, you can check and see if your district can do the same thing. So I actually called and talked to our district governor, Cindy, because I know her, she's a member of our club, and explained the situation to her. And I think this is before I even talked to Tim about this, but she said, well, I'd be willing to approve it, but I think it needs to be the district grants chairman. And if Tim's willing to do it, I'd be supportive of it as well. So that's what led to talking to Tim. We put together a normal kind of a pre-application to be considered. And actually the one that's been sent out today is not the pre-application, it's the actual Rotary International application. I think, Tim, that's the one you sent out. And amazingly, I mean, we're here today and hopefully everyone will endorse what happened. I certainly hope so. But the other thing that happened that was kind of just coincidental was the grants officer with Rotary International this was submitted to and who handled it was Renee Reisling, who's the district grants officer that spoke to our club back in September about being a Rotary grant officer. And so we got it filed in time. And last week, we already have received the approval of Rotary International for this grant. So the $30,000 grant with $10,000 come from Rotary International, along with the DDF from the 3 districts and the club money from the 3 districts. We now have a fully approved Rotary International Global Scholarship. So I don't really know, Tim, what would happen if this doesn't get approved this morning. I don't know if Rotary would then undo their approval. But I am just so grateful to the support that Tim and Leanne gave and that Cindy gave. And I'm really amazed and so pleased how Rotary works, because this is extremely, in my opinion at least, and I'm obviously not, I'm involved, so obviously I'm not totally objective, but this to me is about as worthwhile of a scholarship that I could ever imagine. So I'm happy that we got the support we did, and I thought it'd be worthwhile to explain it to everybody.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for the personal story. Appreciate it. Ralph, would you call for a motion, please?
Sure. I would entertain a motion. If you're going to give a motion, I would appreciate if you'd unmute yourself.
Ralph,
So move.
Ralph, this is Chuck Root. I'd be happy to move approval.
Chuck has moved for approval. Is there a second?
Point of order.
Yes.
Nelson,
Because the action has already been done, according to Robert's Rules of Order, it's not a motion that needs to be presented to the committee, but rather a ratification of the action that's been done. So I would ask if the person who made the motion adjust their motion to reflect that it's a ratification of action already done.
No problem with that.
And,
I'll
still second.
do we have a second for the ratification?
This is Linda Johnson from
I
the
do.
Rotary Club of Ben. I'd be happy to second it. And I have a question. Will there be discussion before we take a vote?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's now time for discussion.
If I could ask a question first, I want to say that I have, as a Rotary Grant team member with Mike, Mike has been amazing in the amount of time and energy that he's put into this whole process. My question is, of the, maybe it's for Tim or Grant or the entire team, through this process of grant application, we've learned about some barriers that we didn't know about before. And it's always awkward to come back and ask for a retroactive vote on something that's already happened. Has the district identified and willing to propose any changes to our existing laws so that these barriers don't occur in the future?
Absolutely, Linda. Let me give you just a quick history. I know the meeting's going longer. In the past, in the ancient past, in this district, we did have a rule where the district governor and the foundation committee chair could approve DDF outside of the quarterly grant meeting folks. And it was felt that those two people abused that right and were picking pet projects on their own without using Rotary Club. And so knowing that information, we will be coming back in April with a recommendation to allow these kind of unique situations to be addressed so we don't end up in these awkward kind of circumstances. I don't know how that will be worded yet, but yes, we're looking at it and we'll be coming back with some recommendations and some suggestions. If anybody has thoughts, please send me an email. Okay, Ralph, you want to move to the question?
I would make one other comment, and that is that, Mike, that was a great report on how this happened. It's very encouraging, and I want all of you to pay close attention to the reason it happened that way is he got in contact with his reviewer and worked it out with the reviewer what they needed to do and how they needed to do it. That really helps, and that was a great report, Mike. Really appreciate that. I'd like to call for the question, and I assume Leanne's going to have a thing that we can vote with.
Just raise your hand.
Okay, we can raise our hands. That would be for I, yes?
Keep them up so we have to change screens. Okay, go ahead. Yeah. Okay.
Good.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed? Excellent.
Looks like it passes, Ralph.
All right, it passes, and we just really appreciate that. And I'll turn it back to you, Leanne.
Great, thank you, Ralph, and congratulations, Mike, and to the Rotary Club of Bend. That's exciting. And actually, Mike, you hit two of my favorite words in Rotary: relationships and partnerships. So like Ralph, I echo that because that's what so many of our successes are based on. So thank you. All right, well, we're preparing to wrap this up. Kind of in summary, I will remind you, please get it on your calendars that April 3rd is the next quarterly grant meeting, and that'll be the last one of this year. And stressing, as Tim mentioned earlier, if you and your club wish to do a global grant in the following Rotary year, we really stress have that ready for the March meeting. So. April. Or for the April meeting, excuse me. Thank you, Tim. So that when the new Rotary year comes around and more money is available, that first meeting in July, we can get that approved for you and move that forward. So we aren't battling the calendar and how quickly the fund is draining across the Rotary year. We also mentioned that when you do that application, be sure and include your bank account information in there at the get-go so that it is complete. If you haven't seen an application for a Global Scholar, they do look different. And so I included that file in the chat box so you can see what Mike and his the committee had to put together in case you're curious there. All right. And you heard Kathy mention that we will be doing some training for the district grants that will be June 1. That'll be coming up. So look for those dates. We'll be getting that out to you, your grant writers. And again, for those of you who joined this meeting late, if you are not already part of the quarterly grant meeting mailing list, please put your name and your email into the chat box. We're capturing that today and we will add you to that list. So you will automatically get our correspondence going forward. And I think, Tim, I'll turn it over to you and see if there's anything you want to close this out with.
No, I just appreciate so much your time joining us and listening to the education, learning more about Rotary, supporting our Rotarians in our grants. And again, ask that if you have any interest in working with our district grants, that we'll be looking to create a committee of 5 or 6 to work with Kathy Poole so that we can more effectively help our clubs fulfill that service to our communities and around the world. And have a great day, and welcome to 2021.
Great to see all of you. Stay safe, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.